Okay, you guys ready?
Inshallah, yeah.
Okay, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the Healthy Ramadan discussion. Something I'm quite excited for. Various different topics we will be discussing. On eating healthy during Ramadan, how you can maintain good sleep, exercise, and I've got two very exciting guest speakers as well. I've got Manira and Wahib. You guys introduce yourselves.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Munira, and I'm a dietitian.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Wahib. I'm an orthopedic surgeon with a special interest in sport injuries. I'm also a qualified personal trainer.
And my name is Safwan. I'm a medical student based in Brooklyn. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the topics we'll be covering. Firstly, why are we doing this discussion in the first place? So the importance of eating healthy in Ramadan, both from a psychological, spiritual, and physical aspect. Thinking healthy, so what sort of preparation can we do? What plans can we make? And what sort of mindset should we go in with? What can we do with eating healthy? So what sort of foods should we select? How can we control our diet? Moving healthy. So what sort of exercise can we do? Can we exercise? When can we fit in that exercise really? And finally, specific health conditions. Okay, next slide, please. Disclaimer, so this is a presentation for general advice only. Please don't use this as sort of personal medical advice. If you would like personal medical advice, then we'd recommend you see your GP or assigned doctor. Any opinions expressed in this presentation are of ours and not BIMA. No sponsorships. And if you have any questions or concerns, then the BIMA email is down below as well. Okay. So just a bit about BIMA. So it's a completely volunteer-led service. It's been running for 10 years now, mashallah. 6,000 members, doctors, pharmacists, dietitians. We've got a whole array of specialists involved in BIMA. Okay, so now on to the importance of health in Ramadan. So why are we talking about this in the first place? Well, firstly, fasting is something that is prescribed by Allah, has numerous health benefits, lowering blood pressure, lowering sugar levels, salt levels in the blood. And actually a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ said, take advantage of 5 before 5, your youth before your old age, your health before your illness, your riches before your poverty, your free time before your work, and your life before your death. Health is something that is so important to us. No matter what we have in our life, we will be unable to enjoy it if we don't have health. And health is important for the daily aspects of our life, such as if you're praying salah, if you need to go into ruku or sajda, you need to have good joints, good muscles to be able to do that. So health is of the utmost importance. And Ramadan, I find, is a great catalyst to kind of build good habits. It's an opportunity to kind of get into good sort of routines, get into good diet, and yes, really good opportunity to build good habits. Okay, so I'll now take it over to Manira and Wajib. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
Yes, I do agree with you, Safwan, in terms of especially in terms of health. I think with Ramadan, I've heard this many times before, that Ramadan is a 30-day sort of where we fast for 30 days, and it's sort of a marathon rather than like a short sprint of runs. So it's really vital for us to sort of plan what exactly would we like to achieve out of it, and how should we try to achieve them. So for instance, if we're planning to go for Tarawih for that year, for inshallah for this year, in terms of your eating how much are you supposed to be eating before Tarawih, just to, to make sure that you're not sort of overeating and that you can actually also participate with the Tarawih with full concentration, with full focus, and not feeling too sort of groggy, after eating too much. And at the same time, also eating, when it comes to eating, also eating food with nutrition, so that, you can also focus, because if you're eating sort of like empty calories as well, you're gonna feel hungry probably even before the start of Tarawih. So yeah, it's really important as well, and to get some physical health. Try to start training, even like small things, like maybe walking around the block, just to get the stamina. Because let's say if you were to do the entire of the Tarawih, that's going to be like at least an hour or two of going up and down the ruku' and the sujood as well. So I think it's really important to take care of your health, especially before the coming of Ramadan.
Yeah, sounds really good. Okay, if we go on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so just all the things we discussed, why we fast, it's an act of worship, and benefits such as what's mentioned on the slide: weight loss, lower cholesterol, stronger immunity, and sort of, yeah, again, that big thing of building those good habits. It's a perfect opportunity to, adjust your diet, and many of us will be in a calorie deficit when we're fasting. So by selecting the right foods for those who are sort of looking to lose weight, get themselves into good health, it's a perfect opportunity, one not to miss, really. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, thinking healthy. So what sort of preparation can we do to maximize this opportunity we have, and what sort of mindset should we get into? So thinking about kind of the planning aspect of Ramadan, I think it's quite important to any sort of outstanding things like admin work, getting the bills of the house sorted, doing all our Eid shopping. It's important to get those things done well before Ramadan. And one sort of very important reason for this is you also don't want to take that time of ibadah away by having to do tasks that could have been done sort of during Ramadan. Also sort of thinking about sleep patterns and getting your body used to fasting. So taking the advantage of the month of Sha'ban, doing a few fasts before the month of Ramadan, just to ease your body into sort of that fasting state, really. And yes, there is going to be that adjustment to the sleep cycle. So sort of taking into considerations of what time you need to get up for work, routine with the children, pre-planning essentially, really. So yeah, what about you guys?
I might be speaking from a really privileged point of view, where I do not have any kids or anyone else to look after except myself. So probably from where I'm speaking from is just from someone who is staying alone, and not having any other commitments apart from maybe job. So it's you could do what you could do is probably plan around your day around ibadah, rather than having the ibadah plan around your day. So for instance, if you're trying to achieve to read the entire Quran, the entire Ramadan, so how exactly are you going to do that? Because it can be quite tricky. There are some tips where I think it was like 4 pages at every salah that might be slightly difficult, when you're going to work. I think it's usually Zuhur and Asr, especially it's usually during work time. So that would be like 8 pages and extra during Maghrib. So how are you gonna sort of try to complete the Quran during these 30 days? And also in terms of like you're doing the Tarawih as well, it's again, it's a very privileged thing, because I do not have kids to be mindful of, where they have like bad times to think about and stuff like that. So trying to do Tarawih as much as possible. Sometimes you can you not you Probably maybe the first 20 days, if you feel that it's too much for you to do the entire full 20, you could maybe, start off with 8, and then once you build up the stamina, try to focus more on the last 10 days, because that's where, everyone's really focusing on trying to get all the du'as and trying to make the Layla to Qadr as well. And I think trying to list down as well, what would you like to make into your du'as as well, especially in the last 10 days. Write it down as the days go by, just write it down, whatever that comes into your head. So I think those kind of things are some of the ways that I usually try to prepare for Ramadan. And as well, like you said, Safwan, during the month of Sha'ban, try to have like a few days of trials of Ramadan just to ease in, so that you don't sort of get a shock when you have to do fasting. I mean, alhamdulillah, this year our fasting hours is not as long as compared to like the past few years during the summer, but still I think it's a great opportunities to sort of have a few trials to see what are the things that you can do, so that during that 30 days you can actually get the most benefits out of it.
Yeah, some really good points mentioned there. And Manira, as you mentioned, I think a couple of slides back, that Ramadan is it's a marathon and not a sprint. So sort of pacing yourself and just doing whatever you can with the I was echoing there. And just doing whatever you am I echoing?
No, you're doing
Okay,
fine.
yeah, just doing whatever you can really. So obviously some of us might have commitments around studying, having to go to work. If, for example, you start work really early in the morning, if you're on a night shift and you're unable to do Tarawih, it's about sort of the effort and what you can do rather than what you do. So if you're, for example, unable to do Tarawih because you have to go to work, you're still getting rewarded, because it's having that intention really. And another point to mention is not to sort of burn yourself out before those last 10 days, because the last 10 days are more important than the first 10 days, because that's when obviously the possibility of Laylatul Qadr. So not burning yourself out, so you reserving your energy. And yeah, Manira, as you mentioned, planning your du'as. You don't want to be halfway through Ramadan and still not sure what du'a to make. So planning out, okay, what do I want to make du'a for in the month of Ramadan? What sort of good deeds do I want to do? So planning out your good deeds. Do I want to, I don't know, maybe donate every Friday for Jummah, sign up for the last my 10 nights. So planning can go a long way really. So next slide, please. Yeah, so be positive, achieve God consciousness, taqwa, gain good deeds, remembrance of Allah. And the other important point to note is intentions as well. So everything you do in Ramadan, whether that's fasting, donating to charity, it's always important to remember that it's purely to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, yeah, improve physical activity, weight management. Next slide, please. Key areas to prepare. So yeah, life routine. So that's your working around your work schedule, your studies, sleep, food and drink and health conditions. A lot of those we'll cover in the next few slides. Next slide, please. Yeah, be prepared. So use month of Sha'ban, proactively trial out your fasts, get your body sort of in that fasting state so that it's not as much of a shock, and plan around your work schedules, caring duties, set realistic expectations. Next slide, please. Yeah, so sort of think about your health. One good point that this slide mentioned is what worked well in the previous Ramadan and what didn't work well. Then you can adjust as you need to for this Ramadan. For example, as one sort of issue I had was the fact that Maghrib and Isha tend to be a lot more close together in Ramadan. So planning around, don't waste too much time. Sort of obviously enjoy yourself at iftar, but if you're planning to go to Tarawih, just be sort of conscious of the fact that you need to go, so you don't have to sort of rush, then you're tired. And then it's about having that mindset. Considering any sort of new health conditions you have, seeking out a health professional for advice on if you should fast or not, and setting yourself some goals as well, realistic goals, so ones that are achievable. And yeah, using Ramadan planners works as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, so exercise, that's one that I'm quite excited to talk about in the later slides with Wajib. Variety in your meals, sleep. One actually aspect of sleep that I wanted to talk about is making sure that you get a good night's sleep. And a lot of that is down to sort of screen time as well. I know this might seem a bit off topic, but quite relevant. So one thing that I've been trying to do is we need to wake up for Sahur. So naturally, some of us will go to sleep and set an alarm on our phone. So actually looking at your screen before you go to sleep can actually disturb your sleep a bit, and it can take a bit longer for you to sleep because it can play around with your sort of cortisol and melatonin hormones, which is not the best to do before you sleep. So for example, setting your alarm way in advance before you sleep so you don't have to then look at your phone or even just look at the news, any sort of unnecessary things, the messages just before you sleep, it can be quite disruptive as well. And some of my friends, what they do is just before they sleep, they dim the lights, maybe half an hour before, and that starts getting your body in the mode of sort of going to sleep. So yeah, having a really good night's sleep. Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on sort of preparation for Ramadan? Anything you guys have tried before?
So, Jazakumullah khair, thanks. Very important points both of you raised. One of the best things to prepare for Ramadan is to reflect on previous Ramadans. And as Muslims, as proactive people, the key is to get better every time. So looking at sleep pattern, looking at exercise, looking at fatigue, tiredness, looking at health conditions, whatever happened in the previous Ramadans is a good lesson to what should be expected to happen this Ramadan. So everybody can immediately have a reference and a baseline they can look at and decide, okay, I want to improve in this aspect, I want to improve in this, I want to pick up this good habit or this bad habit. And read and that's half of the preparation is really having targets. And having targets will only the baseline. So one of the things that reflecting on what happened last Ramadan is it brings insight into where I can get to and what are the potentials. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah, brilliant. Next slide, please. Yeah, so sleep is about quality, not quantity. Avoiding your screens before you go to bed, and sort of anything that can kind of stress you out. I know for me, one thing I've tried recently is not looking at the news just before I sleep. Again, just unnecessary stresses that will start playing with your mind, making it harder to sleep. Keeping your sleep consistent as well, so trying not to change your sleep pattern too much can also help. If another thing is napping, actually, if you've got a particular nap schedule in the daytime, that also helps. And also being mindful of your caffeine as well, which we will also look at in a few slides. Next slide, please. There you go, caffeine and coffee. So yeah, a lot of us are reliant on coffee, myself especially during exams. And it's important to not sort of go completely cold turkey on coffee. And well, you could do actually, it might work, but it's a lot harder if you start Ramadan, you're not having water, you're not having food, you're not having sugar, and you're not having coffee. Kind of like hitting a brick wall, really. So if you are reliant on caffeine, it is good to stop the caffeine now, and then you can ease yourself into it with the Ramadan, where you stop having food and water during the daytime as well. Otherwise, yeah, it can be quite difficult. And also, for example, not having caffeine at Sahur time, because you're going to need to sleep as well. Right, next slide, please. 30 days to form a habit. Yeah, this is one thing that I really like about Ramadan, is the fact that spiritually we're trying our best to stay away from sin, and also trying to do good deeds. If there is a good deed that you've started in Ramadan, it's really good to try and keep that going, even if, let's say, you start multiple things, such as donating to charity or reading the Quran. Even just seeing, okay, which one of these is the most feasible for me to sustain after Ramadan? For example, if you've started donating to charity every month, so let's say a couple of pounds going out of your account each month, just set that up now, and then you can just keep that going after Ramadan. It's such an amazing opportunity to start consistent deeds. And also, if there's a particular sin or anything that you've stopped doing, trying to keep that going after Ramadan as well, having that self-discipline. And Ramadan is like that push that can begin that self-discipline, which you can then continue afterwards. Next slide, please. Yeah, this graph on the right is one that I quite like, quite interesting actually. So 1% every day is let's say a 37% equivalent improvement over 1 year. 1% worse every day is a 3% decline. So it just emphasizes how much of a small change, how much of a big difference small changes can make, really. Next slide, please. Eating healthy. Okay, so yeah, this is another very exciting topic, is what sort of foods should we be eating during Ramadan, and what should we be watching out for in Ramadan? So Munira, I'll let you kind of take this topic off.
Right, okay. So I think in terms of Ramadan, just from like based on observation, culturally, this is not just specifically on like salvations. I think, like after I came here to the UK and I've mixed around with like the different Muslim communities, it seems like everyone has a cultural thing where when during iftar we will usually hit for sugary food or really oily food like samosas, pakora, baklava. So it could be that it's a cultural thing, something that we sort of grew up with. It's like we know like, oh, Ramadan, and we always associate this sort of food with Ramadan. It could also be like a psychological thing where we've sort of abstained from food and drink for X amount of hours. So probably entirely all we've sort of been thinking about is, what am I going to be eating? What is the first food that I'm going to put in my mouth as soon as the adhan goes off? So that could actually also lead to overindulgence. So I suppose hopefully after today we sort of give you guys like some ideas of how to sort of curb like overindulgence or sort of like overeating, and like how do we exactly try to go to it like the healthier side. So I thought before we go to the next slide, do you have any thoughts of one and Wahi about healthy eating, or like what are sort of your eating patterns during iftar?
So yeah, I mean, one thing that I need to watch out for this Ramadan is, for me especially, I get so excited for iftar, whole day of not eating, really wanting that sort of dopamine rush from all the good food, and then I end up filling my plate up with loads of food, and then I realize, oh, I can't finish this. I eat half of it, and then I realize, oh, I can't finish this food. But the thing is, I have to finish it because culturally, and they say, finish your food, otherwise the shaitan will eat it. So, I'm not saying it's something that like a cultural thing that we've been told. But yeah, then I feel inclined that I have to finish my food, and then I can't do tarawih afterwards, and I can't even, it's difficult to do tarawih, particularly if you've had a lot of fried food as well, because it can make you quite constipated and gassy, which isn't good. So one thing that one of my friends told me is, fill up your plate with small portions, finish that portion, and then once you're full, you're still hungry, then fill up that plate again with more food. Don't just get super excited and fill up loads. It sounds like common sense, but in the moment, it's
Yeah.
the hunger gets to you.
Yeah.
And then another point is because we're abstaining also from sugary foods as well. Generally, when you're having sugary foods, it can trigger fire off the reward sensation in your brain, so that feel good feeling. So if you've abstained a whole day without sugar, then when you get to iftar, it can be very easy to overindulge on the sweet foods as well. And then overindulging on the sweet foods can make you feel quite lethargic. So what I think is better is just having those small, sensible doses of sugar just to get that feel-good feeling. But after that, it's just kind of don't try not to overindulge.
There's a really good point, Safwan. If I could just touch on what you were saying, the small, like have one plate first and then have a second round if you do feel hungry. I think an idea just came to my mind, like you could probably have small goals. For instance, like if you are planning to go for Tarawih for this year, inshallah, you could probably ask yourself, like, how much food do I actually need to sustain from myself from iftar up till Tarawih? And then just have that much so that you're going to be able to carry out the Tarawih without feeling sick, without feeling like, oh, this is actually too much. I'm feeling sort of tired and like I just want to go onto the couch and just slouch myself on there because I've just overindulged. And then when you come back from Tarawih, if you still do feel hungry, you can always just go for a second. And I think something that as a dietitian we've always sort of being taught is that when you eat, try to eat on a plate so that you can actually see what you're putting on a plate, and then that whatever that's going to go on the plate is going into your stomach. So always remember that your stomach is just the size of your fist. So do you feel that all of this food, if it's going to fit into the fist without actually feeling that you've overstretched, then if you feel that you're going to be able to do that, you're going to sustain to do that, then go for it. If you feel that actually whatever that is in the stomach on the plate might be too much to fill up in the stomach, which is actually just a size of fist, then probably you can put it back slightly a bit here and there. And in terms of like the reward thing, I think what we could do, like let's take baklava for an instance. It's sugar. It's just pure sugar being poured over. So what an alternative, probably you could just like brush it. I'll make the baklavas in like smallest kind of sizes so that you're not kind of overeating it. Or the best thing will be not to have them in the house if it's not necessary, so that you sort of wipe out totally the overindulgence aspect on like the sweets. It could be a treat, like maybe once every fortnight, but if you constantly have it at home, then you're obviously going to be tempted to have them. What are your thoughts, Wahid?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's really good advice to implement. If you really don't have it, you won't eat it, right? You won't try and make it and eat it. Another thing I probably would add is the fact that breaking the fast should be done according to the sunnah with dates and water. When you break the fast with dates and water, and then you go to pray Maghrib, and then you come back, you already primed your digestive system. You already primed also your mental state, prepared your mental state for eating food. If you eat food when you break the fast, you're more likely to overeat. You're more likely to not resist eating fatty food or deep fried stuff because you're hungry. Psychologically, you want to eat as much as you can. And from experience, myself and other people, if you actually do dates water or even maybe some milk before Maghrib, and then have your meal after Maghrib, you naturally feel way better towards the rest of the night. You won't stuff yourself too much, and you won't get that feeling of overeating, overindulged. And you will also be more controlled in terms of what you eat. You won't be tempted by that extra sweet dish or that extra deep fried samosa, because you're making a conscious decision about what you are eating. So by actually delaying your fatur, your full meal to after salah, that's also another self-control measure. And Ramadan is all about learning how to self-control from the moment go. So inshallah, we kind of capitalize and leverage on these habits, which is self-control, especially in this time and age when instant gratification is the the norm. And we can use that for better health, better eating habits, and also better ways of living in general. And also it can involve family and friends. So for example, when you go to do shopping, you discuss all the time, okay, this is our shopping list. How can we make how can we make this shopping list healthy? What are the things that we can do without for Ramadan? Just for Ramadan. And then when everybody's on board, they will be more inclined to do the same after Ramadan. So you can build into the family routine healthy habits too.
That's a really, really good.
Yeah.
Go
So
on.
you're going to say something, Safwan?
Oh no, I'd say it's like very good points that's been raised there.
Yes, subhanAllah, actually, when Wahid was saying about the breaking fast with the dates and the drinks first and then going to Salatul Maghrib, I think there were studies as well to say that sometimes the cue for hunger and thirst is actually almost similar. So actually having a glass of water and then having the date and then going away for Salat, that can actually sort of calm you down in terms of like, like, oh, I need to eat something. So actually already having the water, you kind of coming down your stomach as well, and then your mind psychologically that you actually already had something in your mouth, and then going to the table and getting something, hopefully that helps to lower the chances of overindulgence. I'm just conscious of the time, not sure what's gonna happen when 7 minutes passes. Is the video gonna stop, or does anyone know? Should I just continue?
I think we'll
continue.
yeah, let's continue, and then as it gets closer to the time, we'll take a small break and then come back.
Okay. Can we just go to the next slide then? Thank you. So I think there is a saying that, in terms of our stomach, what the best way, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has mentioned that a third of our stomach should be filled with food, a third of it should be filled with water, and then a third of it with air. So this again, it brings back to not overindulge, and I think Ramadan will be the best time to actually try to incorporate this sort of do forgive me, I can't remember if this is a sunnah or hadith, but yeah, so it's something where we can actually incorporate into our daily life. It doesn't have to be just during Ramadan, but it can also be done, after Ramadan. It's maybe a habit that we can bring it off Ramadan, especially if weight loss is something that you're sort of keen to achieve as well. Can I get with the next slide? So there is the Eat Well plate, which I think it's being by the Public Health England. So basically it sort of shows, like, the fruits and vegetables, what are whole grains, carbohydrates, water and milk, and protein. So hopefully, inshallah, we'll be able to go through the different parts of the slides as we go along. So we'll go for the next one. So in terms of salts, we know that if we have too much salt in our dietary, that can actually lead to a higher risk of blood pressure, stroke, heart attack, and kidney stones. So what the Public Health of England, the recommendation is to have not more than 6 grams of salt, or that is actually also equivalent to 1 teaspoon of salt. So one of the ways that we can actually lower the consumption of salt is obviously the first and foremost is things like the potato chip, the crisps, biscuits, processed meats as well, takeaways, any deep fried food, they're usually filled with so much salt. So or sometimes when you do cook, I think in the Asian and the Middle Eastern cooking, we do not do measurements. The mums always do, they call the eyeball thing, or we're just going by feel. So that can actually also sometimes cause you to probably use more salt than not. So one good idea will be that to sort of season your food at table rather than during, when you're cooking, so you can sort of control the amount of salt, because sometimes different people have like different salt level of, tolerance or something. So it might be that, there's already salt in there, but you feel like you actually want it to be more salty, or just some people just have the habit of actually adding salt, even though if it's already salty. So I think one of the best way, or one alternative will be to add salt after cooking, and in terms of like, instead of deep frying food, you can always options such as baking or air fry if you do have an air fryer. Potentially you could do some pre-cooked foods like over the weekends. So for like the days that you do get tired, especially like during the last 10 days of Ramadan, you do get slightly more tired as compared to like the first 20 days. So maybe have some pre-made food and keep it frozen in the freezer, so that when you do get tired, there's always food there instead of having to get some takeaways, because takeaways food are as well, they are really high in salts and saturated fats. Can we get the next slide? So in terms of fats, again, we know that if you have too much fats, that will lead to weight gain. The high cholesterol, which can lead to heart diseases, stroke. So those are usually associated with like the saturated fats, so things like butter, ghee. So those are the kinds of things that again can be found in fast food, in processed foods, in biscuits, crisps. So those are like the saturated fats. So the Public Health England again has recommended that for men to not have more than 30 grams of saturated fats, and for women to not have more than 20 grams of saturated fats from the age of 19 and above. 19 and above. And so to substitute with the saturated fats, we would usually encourage unsaturated fats. So you have things like the olive oil, the rapeseed oil, and then you also have your oily fish as well. So things like salmon, fishes like sardines, trouts. So these are the kind of things where you can actually, or even nuts. There is also the unsaturated fats as well in nuts. So for nuts, the recommended serving size will be 30 grams. Just be aware that when you do get nuts, make sure that it's unsalted and unsweetened, so that you're not getting this, you're kind of getting all the benefits rather than having having salt or sugar that's going to sort of not getting as much benefit, if that makes sense. So 30 grams is basically just a handful of nuts. So things like almond nuts, walnut, cashew nuts, and pistachio. And in terms of like the oily fish, it's the recommended portion is 140 grams, or at least like a palm size is the fish recommended portion. And alternatives to sort of prevent too much fat consumption would be trying to grill or bake or air fry your food, use the kind of spray. So I think in the supermarket right now, they have for rapeseed oil, apart from olive oil, they have for rapeseed and sunflower oil as well, so you can use it. So I think one spray is equivalent to 1 calorie. So again, that is some ways that you can sort of measure the amount of fats that you're using during your preparation of food. Sorry
to cut you off. I think we'll take a small break just because the time's going to end, and then we'll kind of restart.
Yep, sure, not a problem.
Okay.
So do we just leave the